Hello and welcome to Ephemera. I am fantasy author Katie Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert. We hope you are enjoying our theme music courtesy of Alex White, and welcome to anybody joining us for the first time. Welcome back to any who have joined us before in our virtual home here. For those who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated series chaired by Katie and myself.
Pre-COVID, we held events in the Glad Day bookshop, and we are thrilled to assuage our existential dread with you right here on YouTube. Sorry, that was me. We would like to begin by, I was too full of dread. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon.
And the land on which I live and work is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas, and is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Additionally, this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Tonight, we're gathered for stories of dread, including a book about horrifying infrastructure. And as always, fiction is never far from the truth. This week, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited Nain in Nunatsiavut, which is a northern Labrador Inuit community facing a dreadful infrastructure deficit, as so much of Canada's north does. The PM's visit followed a visit from Marie-Josée Houle, who is Canada's first federal housing advocate, something we really badly need. And she went there back in October and said, housing in the North is a reflection of an ongoing human rights failure and really does need urgent attention, calling housing conditions abominable. It's not just housing either. Infrastructure deficits in the North extend to things like roads. There are next to no roads suitable for all-season driving in Nunatsiavut, according to the National Aboriginal Economic Development Board. And there are deficits in things like port facilities, bridges, energy, food security, clean drinking water, wastewater management throughout the North. The access statistics are truly dreadful. I'll link to some resources in the chat at the end. This poses significant challenges to community development, socioeconomic growth, emergency management, maintenance of sustainable, happy, healthy communities. As an example, the runway the PM touched down on can only be used during the day, lacking the lighting essential for nighttime operation. And remember, this is a place where there are fewer daylight hours through the winter, and one that relies heavily on air transport and essential resources that come in that way. Indeed, Juri Kaketpitum, who of the Indigenous-led First Nations Infrastructure Institute, points out that infrastructure in northern, predominantly Inuit communities is further challenged by factors such as shorter construction seasons, shorter days, costs associated with delivery of building materials, and changes in the environment due to climate change. It's hitting the North first, of course, and it means all these communities get further and further behind. The 2022 federal budget has promised an $11 billion spending over 6 years to support Indigenous families and communities generally, and that money includes $4 billion for housing over 7 years. But the Prime Minister refused to comment on timing with regards to the community that he visited. And as Indigenous Watchdog and other Indigenous-led accountability bodies remind us, the federal government is already well behind on fulfilling many of their calls to action, not to mention the centuries-long history of broken treaties and broken promises. It's imperative for the federal government to provide support financially, and that means working especially with Inuit communities who know what they need, know how to fill those gaps, but it's not just about filling gaps or stopping catastrophes, it's about building sustainable communities for the long term. Canada is one of the richest countries in the world, and it's an absolute embarrassment and a black mark on all of us who've settled here for how bad this has gotten. So please talk to your federal reps, put pressure on them, ask they prioritize the infrastructure gap in Inuit communities, and make sure every community is getting the resources that they need. I'll provide a few resources in the chat as well.
And before we continue, just a quick shout out to all of our many friends, colleagues, and Ephemera alumni on the Aurora Award ballot. Congratulations to you all. An online award ceremony will be held on August the 19th at 5 p.m. Eastern, so keep your eyes open for the voting period.
We are so honored to have received a nomination in the Best Fan-Related Work category. That is a category change. But in all seriousness, we are humbled by the community and an ephemeral spirit, which is all of you as well. We've all created this together over the last few years. We're so proud that it has resonated across all of our programming years. This is our third nomination, right?
I think we've been in a different category every time.
I think so.
So maybe this year will be the one that sticks. But seriously, thank you all. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming before we get too mushy. Nothing says a beautiful May evening like dread, right?
Yeah, I think you'll find that the beautiful, the innocuous, and the quiet can be the most dreadful things of all. I do just want to say upfront for everybody watching, this will be a dark show. Dread kind of implies that, but it will be a powerful one. It will deal with many heavy subjects, and as the theme implies, that's up to you if you want to stay. If you're not up for tonight, totally cool. We'll see you next time. We'll happily welcome you back, of course, always. And of course, you can take a break anytime. You are at home after all, and you have excellent boundaries after all. But for now, I am pleased to introduce our very first reader. Indrapramit Das is a writer and editor from Kolkata, India. He is a Lambda award winner for his debut novel, Devourers, Penguin, which is from Penguin India and Del Rey, and a Shirley Jackson award winner for his short fiction, which has appeared in a variety of anthologies and publications through Tor.com, Slate Magazine, Clarkesworld, and Asimov Science Fiction. Excellent venues. He is an Octavia E. Butler Scholar and a grateful member of the Clarion West class of 2012. He has lived in India, the United States, and Canada, where he received his MFA from the University of British Columbia. Welcome, Indra.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here reading alongside such fine writers. I do want to apologize in advance to my fellow readers because I'm going to have to leave right after my reading because it's 4:30 in the morning in Kolkata, but I will be watching tomorrow. So good luck with your readings. So should I just dive into it? Great. So I'm going to read from my story, Here Comes Your Man, from Ellen Datlow's Screams from the Dark anthology. It's a condensed excerpt, but the full story is available in that book. Here Comes Your Man. Oh, and I do apologize. I'm going to be reading from the screen, so I shall be staring fixedly like a demon at the camera. Can I buy you both a cup of tea? The man asks them in Bengali, his smile too lazy to not be genuine. Dressed in a shawl, his hair long and wild, he looks like one of the Bowls. Aditya and Megha take him up on his offer, since they've come to Shantiniketan to mingle with the bards and townsfolk during the winter harvest festival. The locals treat the two of them like tourists, but then they are. Everyone they've met has been friendly, welcoming. They don't think twice about talking to another stranger. The bearded man buys them shot glass-sized plastic cups of sugary cha from one of the stalls. There's a turtle-like placidity to him, the careful way he hands them the cha, his shawl wrapped tight around his neck so his head seems to emerge from hunched shoulders. Are you both from Kolkata? He asks. Their clothes and accents always give them away. They say that they are. Where are you staying? He asks. Aditya hesitates because his Bengali is rusty from his years abroad, and it embarrasses him. Megha takes over. We're staying in town. My family has a house here. They are here also? No, they're home in Kolkata. They don't like to visit during Posh Mela, too crowded. I've been visiting the Mela here for many years, you know, the man says. There weren't so many people coming for the festival even 10 years ago. This town was once full of field and forest that is now getaway houses for people from Kolkata. He smiles at them. You must be here to sing your baul? Megha asks him hurriedly to fill the silence between them. He laughs gently. Oh no, I play no instrument. I could never be a bard. I'm here because I like to make friends. I think it pays to treat people well. Some of my friends are over there. We are just here to enjoy it all, he says with a nod to a circle of men a few feet away, sitting on the grass and drinking tea amid the passing legs of the crowd. The blue smoke of cigarettes wreathes their heads. That languorous smile rolls across the man's face again. It brings people together, the harvest festival, he says, waving his hand. He's right, of course. There are thousands of people packed into the field from all over the vast countryside that fills the spaces between Indian cities. Their heads bob like a sea, bathed in jaundiced neon from light murals and the flashing decals of cheap fairground rides. Like you two, all the way from Kolkata, the man says, lilting the name of the city as if it were a distant, exotic land out of reach instead of 3 hours away by train. I can see that you are not brother and sister. That's all right. You are a good-looking couple. It makes me glad to see such happy, good-looking boys and girls together. They thank the man with polite smiles, downing their cha. Aditya coughs, his tongue and throat burning. The man crumples his little plastic cup, now empty. There's a crackle as he tosses it to the grass. Can I make a prediction? He asks, poking a large bony hand out of his brown shawl, which hides his lank body like a cloak. They don't even need to nod before he decides they've agreed. Give me your hand, my dear, he says. Aditya watches as Megha does. Her hand lies small like a chocolate in the man's joined palms. The sight is oddly disturbing. He makes her hand disappear within his before flipping it, exposing her palm and running a thumb across it. Aditya gets goosebumps. The man nods, sage-like, his long hair bobbing. Now yours, he says. Aditya flinches slightly when the man takes his hand, though he doesn't expect to. The man repeats the motions he went through with Megha, but quicker. The man's fingertips are coarse and dry, as if the whorls at the ends of them are etched into wood. He touches lightly, lets go. Aditya pulls his hand away. Yes, the man grins, lids sliding over his eyes slowly as he blinks. You're an artist, aren't you? You both are. Megha works as an editor for a small academic press, but Aditya's nod is enough. I can tell that you're an artist. You have the look, he says. You will fail her financially because of this. Husbands cannot be artists. This you will have to live with if you marry him, he says to Megha. You must marry, of course. You don't look like the kind of girl that goes around with a boy without getting married. A girl like you, such light skin from a good family, is a pride of our nation. You are destined to be a good wife and give us healthy children. There's trouble ahead for you both, though. Megha glances at Aditya, one hand going to the small of his back. He knows what her fake smile looks like, and it makes him uneasy in the best of circumstances. She's wearing that smile. We should go now. We've had a long day, Aditya tells his man. You must have been exploring the town. Let me tell you something. You shouldn't go to the groves beyond the Moidan. There are people who fuck there in the evening, under the trees and in the bushes, out in the open as if they don't care who sees them, he says, face wrinkling in sudden revulsion. Young men being men, getting carried away by their nature, them I can understand. But these shameless girls with them, they have no modesty. Imagine doing such things in the open, none of them even married. It's filthy. Such women cannot be the future mothers of this land. You are good young people. You would be disgusted if you saw it, I know. Stay away from there. Adito feels Megha push her shoulder against his arm. Her hand stays at his back. He can feel her fingertips through his jacket. The man licks his lips. Let me buy you both another cup of tea. No, thank you. We really are feeling very tired, Adito tells him. Then what's the harm in more tea, yes? It will wake you up. You cannot retire this early when the Poshmala is going on. You're young and from the city, how can you be tired? Look at all these people. They are hard-working country folk who are awake long past their bedtimes, just to enjoy. His teeth appear from behind the oiled curls of his mustache and beard. You don't speak much, but when you do, your accent is different from hers. Did you go abroad, he asks. I went to America. I did my studies there, Adito tells him. He can't tell whether he should be rude and insist on leaving. He feels a dull throb above his genitals, a fresh urge to urinate. I knew an American once, says the man. White as an eggshell. I speak very good English, you know. So this lonely man could talk to me. He gave me lots of money to show him around in Delhi. He paid me to be his friend. I didn't like it there. I didn't like him. I left soon enough. My true home is in the mountains in Rishikesh, the holiest of places. It is a long and rugged road up to it. He looks at Megha. You must visit me there. Yes, you will come to Rishikesh and ask the guides to take you to Cave 42. But do not trust the dark-skinned guides by the paths. They will carry you up the mountain on their shoulders. It is an uncouth thing for a girl like you. If you're not careful, they will take you to their own caves and you will never leave. No, come to my cave, my beautiful girl, and I promise you I will put a wild tiger cub in your lap. Megha grips Adito's forearm. We really must go now, I'm sorry, Adito tells the man, and takes a step back, eyeing the men sitting in a circle not far from them. Oh, you're tired, don't worry. The man flashes his widest grin yet, his hands hovering around Megha and Adito's shoulders as if about to touch them. I will buy you some more tea, and you will come sit with my friends, he says, and walks between them toward the stall. Thank you.
Thank you. I love this kind of disquieting undercurrent that you so masterfully kept escalating with details and nuances. Indra, that was fantastic.
Thank you very much. I hope you all liked it. The rest of the story is in Screams from the Dark by Ellen Datlow, which also has a whole bunch of amazing writers. The second part of the story takes place in the couple's bungalow and is from the POV of Megha, the young woman. That's it. I wish I could hang around. Maybe I will for a little bit to see the beginning of the next reading. But thank you so much for listening and for inviting me here.
And thank you for being with us at a very, very late hour. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So dread is a really specific and interesting emotion, eh? I mean, horror is revulsion at seeing something terrible. Dread, as we just saw, is all about anticipation of seeing it or something happening.
Well, it's like Hitchcock's bomb under the table theory, isn't it? Horrible things are much worse when you know they are coming.
Yeah, so if, for example, I had something terrible in this box and you all knew that I was going to open it after our last reader.
Yeah, that might trigger some dread.
Well, then I shall keep it firmly closed for now. And for now, it's my pleasure to introduce our next guest. Rasiqra Revulva is a disabled queer femme writer, artist, editor, musician, and performer, developer and co-editor of the hybrid experimental section at the Ex-Puritan, and half of the experimental electronic duo The Data Bats at Slice Records. She has published 3 sold-out chapbooks: Cephalopography, Words on Pages, 2016, If You Forget the Whipped Cream, You're No Good as a Woman, Gap Riot Press, 2018, and Sailor, Sailor, The Blasted Tree, 2021. Cephalopography 2.0 from Woolsack and Wynne, 2020, is her award-nominated debut collection. And a content warning for the reading ahead, the work references gendered and or sexual violence. Welcome, and thank you for being here tonight.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Ephemera and Introdas. That was, oh my goodness, so chilling, and I really can't wait to read more and find out what happens next and just feel terrible about it. I'm going to start with a poem that is from my second chapbook, which I'll hold to the screen. It's from Gap Riot Press in 2018, called If You Forget the Whipped Cream, You're No Good as a Woman. This is a found poem, an erasure poem of Shirley Jackson's novel Hangs a Man, which is one of my favorite books. And this particular chapbook, as well as the Blodwin Prize 2017 chapbook in which it was initially published, are both sold out. But if you ask very nicely, I will share a copy with you of the poem. I don't have chapbook copies, unfortunately. They are brilliantly gone. Very ephemeral, one might say. My favorite Shirley Jackson book was eaten by my rapist dog.
It was an awful, it was a I am God, the disagreeably clinging, sweet, sharp sensation of being. I gave you this to try you out. Understand, I am interested in seeing you write and encouraging you to be a good writer. Let me take, let me create.
The gap between the poetry, they redacted, wrote, and the poetry, redacted, contained, was full-bosomed and rich. Sister, mouth against grass, sun, mountains, sister. Made of irradiant colors. I didn't hear you. I was myself instead. Now walk away faster. Here, inside the darkness. And the darkness pulled about her with silent, patient hands. And the darkness pulled about her with silent, patient hands. I don't remember. Nothing I remember endlessly happened. I will not think about it, will not think about it, will not think about it.
The most horrible was the mirror.
Of course, I am dreaming. How profoundly interested I am in your ideas about death.
My ambitions, my plan. If you abandon me, you lose yourself. You're devoted.
Redacted. I am not really very frightened. I am enclosing it, caressing the spine with great delicacy, dislodging the nails which remain intact while my fingers pull hinges apart. Carefully together, breathing, fainting, crying, looking.
It was an awful thing.
Sure, careful fingers, pouches inside the sweet, small bones.
Breathing.
Do you want to go back? Do you want to bend and break wide open so that there is nothing and nothing and nothing except me and what I want, waiting in the darkness? Lie back, close your eyes, say, I am where I belong. It's natural and quiet and exciting. Remember. Wait a while, I'm almost ready. It won't take long. I thought it was a game. Redacted, said. Keep thinking of it as a game. Redacted, said, and put out their cigarette carefully. Thank you. I'm going to do one more piece now, which is a different found poem also. It is a, I'm just sorry, I have two pieces that I'm choosing from right now. And I think I'm going to go with the dread of Wonder Woman over the dread of Duolingo. Both very dreadful, but you know, in very different ways. So just a moment, I'm just going to set up. This next piece is called Gobble Gobble. It is a found poem, and the source for the text is the rejected Wonder Woman script circa 2006 from noted feminist icon Joss Whedon. Very dreadful. Gobble, gobble. She falls into the hole like dozens of rats, almost silhouetted by the cheery, bright gloss of a commercial. She's a beautiful monster. Other men grab her. A quirky private room, colorful and retro, majestic, but not gaudy. It is, in every sense, a low place. The dazzling thing rides out from the corner of a wall and spews fire. Let's chase that sugar. I need a little feeling. The scene is another collapsed building where the American girl scuttles back into the shadows, about as hairy as predicted. The scene is another collapsed building where, from above, a writhing girl becomes indignant, tied and gagged behind a velvet rope. The scene is another collapsed building where she's on her knees, bowing and whispering, tight-lipped to the many, many packs of white powder. This is why I can't leave you alone. She knows her death is imminent. She falls into the hole in position, cramming it in as if for the first time. She's in the outfit, twitching like a snake. He tugs her blouse, looks down it, smiles, unsettlingly anthropomorphic. He brings it to her lips. He'll do anything. The other two watch, laughing. She drops to the ground, choking on it. They always do. The scene is, I hate the fact that I'm so attracted to you. Various POVs, and each image the same horror. Tires smoking as the driver tries to pull away. The scene is, just touching you is overwhelming. It's sad, the way a funeral is sad. The scene is, turn around so I can see more of you naked, but slowly, slowly, slowing to a dead stop. She falls into a hole on her hands and knees. an unlovely gurgle in her breath. The thing starts greedily gulping. I'm afraid now. The truck lights her up with its high beams. Oh, sorry, I've lost my place. The thing starts greedily gulping. I'm afraid now. Then he grabs her wrist. You want to rope me? The luminous flora surrounding shatters on her skin. Spat on, stepped on. Her bare foot heading for the dirt resembles the head of a spear. I'm afraid now. The truck lights her up with its high beams, curvaceous adders snapping, taut as a drawn bow. It's degrading to be felled. He should be on a surfboard, every inch the petty warlord. I'm afraid now. He dies staring at her, the white deformed face, the bright red teeth. She smiles. The head topples back as the body ripples blindly. It's like Christmas over and over. The tawdry outfit, the sparks and fire erupting from the wound, a pedestal with a bowl of corn, the symbol of American ingenuity, prosperity, and cultural diversity. She smiles, then she falls. Thank you.
Thank you. I so love the interplay between audio and words and performance. That was just a wonderful performance and experience. Thank you for that.
It was amazing. Definitely never going to read that script.
No. Also don't think we need to.
No. So
I forgot to say
Yeah.
that last piece, if anyone's interested in reading it, the chapbook that it's published in is available as a free ebook through APEP Press. It's called These Poems Are Not What They Seem. It's a Twin Peaks anthology.
very cool. Checked into the chat. Oh, cool. Thank you, Katie.
Yes.
Seriously, what's in the box?
Also, this is really interesting because curiosity isn't quite dread. I think we've done curiosity. I can't remember at this point.
We have.
But dread's not entirely certain, right? The ambiguity is part of what makes it so dreadful. But we have a pretty good idea that at least nothing good will happen.
Ambiguity and inexorability. I feel like that's a potent mix. For me, like watching a deadline approach and not entirely knowing what lies on the other side.
Or sitting in the dentist waiting room for me. Hey, audience, what do you dread besides this box? You can tell us in the chat. And I think we've got 2 readers to go.
While we mull on that, I'm going to introduce our next reader. Andrew F. Sullivan is the author of novels The Marigold, The Handyman Method, co-written with Nick Cutter, Waste, which is a Globe and Mail Best Book, and the story collection All We Want Is Everything, a Globe and Mail Best Book and finalist for the Relit Award. Andrew lives in Hamilton, Ontario. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. That was a really great performance, and it's going to be a lot to try and follow. I don't have any mic effects, but I will do my best. All right. I'm going to be reading from The Marigold, which is my novel that just came out just under a month ago. It is a polyphonic fungal horror story about the city of Toronto that gets sometimes pitched as dystopic, but honestly might just be what it's going to be like next week. So I'm going to read an early chapter from this. It is about 2 public health inspectors who are in over their heads. And I'll just go from there right now. So thanks again for having me. Here we go. Even in the wet snow, Kathy Jin refused to ride the shit car. Some of her kinder colleagues called it the ghost car. Coming from an underfinanced department in the city's struggling public health department, most wet investigators were told to provide their own transportation or take transit. Occasionally, a cop or a paramedic might bring them along, warily watching for any sign of a cough slipping out from under their helmet. When she wasn't wearing the full mast helmet mandated by the department, Kathy wore sunglasses, mirrored and chrome. It helped keep the world at bay. I'm walking, Kathy said. We can wait for another one, Jasmine said back, eyes blinking through the snow. They were both old hands at this now. Phone says next one is here in like 3 minutes. I want you to look down the street there, Kathy said. You see anything that looks like a streetcar? Your phone lies. We stand here like idiots, or we start walking. The shit car sat in front of them, one of the newer streetcars running without an operator, stupid enough to almost drown itself under the Dundas underpass during the floods 2 years before, filled to the brim with sewage. There were others too damaged to keep in circulation. The TTC claimed to have cleaned this one out, but the stench remained. Few riders took the risk. The ghost car is what the news called it, a haunted house stalking the streets. Progress for progress' sake, Jasmine asked, wiping melted flakes off her skin. I'd rather be a fool under my own power than stand out here waiting for a train that never comes, Kathy said, dragging her kit behind her, the horned helmet bouncing like it was alive. Streetcar, Jasmine said, following behind. She adjusted her jacket collar against the cold. It hid the public health logo on the inside. Most people didn't want a wet investigator in their neighborhood, even when the first bodies started popping up in bus shelters or half-eaten in the sand. They didn't want to know. They weren't about to start wearing their own little masks again. Kathy knew Jasmine kept her own mast helmet inside her bag, as if people didn't know what it hid. Jasmine still thought the wet was something you could control. Kathy wanted to tell her that it was more like a weather system, something to be endured rather than confronted. Whatever, Kathy said, trudging along the half-plowed sidewalk. Everything melted, refroze, melted again. The shit car came to life and passed them down King, empty, warm, and reeking. I want to get there before some idiot decides to poke it with a stick. The latest case was assigned just an hour before, a notification blinking to life on her phone. Jasmine mouthing, go time, in the office kitchen. An alert in a parking garage under a condo tower in Liberty Village, a former yuppie enclave now struggling with rising lake water. How bad do you think it'll be this time? Jasmine said. They used to work their own cases before people began to report some of the bodies were still alive. Kathy ran one of the safe injection sites before whispers of the wet arrived. She didn't fight the move. It was better than getting fired, ending up on the streets with her former clients. No one knew what the wet was at that time. They only knew something was spreading up from the lake, a toxic mold burrowing its way through the foundations of older buildings, sometimes appearing in large splotches on the ceiling, or like fingers rising from the floorboards in the rooming houses, the ones that hadn't been converted back into single-family homes for music producers and startup investors. I'm sure we'll need the masks, Kathy said. The new department was simply called Investigations. There was almost no funding. The job was solely to observe and report, tracking victims and infected sites. Like most things in the city, it only sounded simple. You came, you saw, you trembled. My favorite, Jasmine said. You know I love to play astronaut. 2 cop cars sat in front of the building, blocking access to the parking garage. Real ones, not the private threshold security some companies had taken to retaining in the other waterfront districts. They tried to paint over pig scrawled onto one of the back doors with white house paint. One of the officers waved Kathy over. The heavy building manager paced back and forth between the cruisers, bald head decorated with melting snow. The officers ignored him. I don't think it's that bad, the manager sputtered at Kathy. He knew what the heavy masks in her bag meant. Could be garbage. Someone just probably overreacted, you know? We'll determine that, Jasmine said, placing a hand on his forearm. Kathy preferred to let Jasmine handle the people. She had a talent for zeroing in on people's insecurities, the weak points in their character. Sometimes that included Kathy's. No one is going to blame you for this, all right? It's not like bed bugs or rats. We need you to stay calm until we figure this out. He smiled weakly under Jasmine's grasp. The officer stood and watched. There was no solidarity here. The wet investigators were considered disposable. Most public employees didn't even want to know what they did, just that they disappeared, that anyone around them might be questioned, maybe even tested and quarantined during the aftermath. Kathy pulled her mask over her head, checking the seal as it closed around her neck, locking together like a metal noose. The sensors stood out like goat horns over the massive tinted eye ports and breathing chamber. Can't we wait? Jasmine said. We don't even know if it's a false positive yet. Kathy rolled her eyes, glad Jasmine couldn't see them in the helmet. That was how most of their fights started. She did it again, savoring the moment. Put it on. It's probably a level 1 at most, Jasmine said. You're acting like this is my first day. Like I'm the one who, said you'd be good at this. We're partners, right? I don't need a lecture. And it's not a level 1. So what's your plan? Jasmine pulled her own silver mask out of her bag, strapped it on tight. 2 shiny minotaurs now. Some of the newer masks had a matte finish. You happy now? As close as I'll get today, Kathy answered. Let's see what they got for us down here. It was hard to get funding for a department dedicated to a problem many didn't believe existed. This is why there was no truck, no centralized office, no real mandate beyond trying to contain this ephemeral thing that the department had taken to calling the wet. No government above the city wanted to recognize the problem. Kathy knew they made do with the scraps the city offered, often sponsored by funds from the threshold districts, those corporate-owned sectors of the Eastern Shore. Most of the money went to the masks, expensive, fragile, prone to malfunction, but deeply loved. Jasmine had carved her initials into the forehead of her own rig. Kathy made her way through the lobby filled with abstract orange paintings and sculptures resembling pigs without heads. Jasmine followed behind her to the service door, and they descended the concrete stairs together, heavy masks blinking and whirring under the fluorescence. The parking garage walls were slick with condensation. On the bottom floor, Kathy led the way past the luxury SUVs and electric cars, letting the readout in her mask guide her toward the source. Buddy looked like he was going to have a heart attack up there, Jasmine said. I don't blame him. Kathy knew the wet was something people whispered about, but rarely mentioned in public. There were message boards, hastily deleted accounts, owners and landlords reckoning with this new threat. If the building was officially infected, everyone would need to move out. The accusations would start with the tenants, then the management company, then eventually the developer, and then whoever was originally hired to build the tower. And then the lawsuits would start. He probably hid it as long as he could, Kathy said. These guys are like cockroaches. They only start scuttling if you turn on the light. One of the sensors in her mask began flickering red and white, a gentle warning of spores in the air around her. We're close. Jasmine circled a bright red Mercedes on their right while Kathy moved forward, her mask interpreting the world around her. It wasn't a bloom this time emerging from the ground or the concrete walls around them, thick, oozing, and alive. This one was a body. What was once a person. The wet fed off of it. Kathy didn't look away. Her mask read the scene, recording the data required before they took the first step to contain it. We got one. A body, Kathy said. What building is this again? Looks like a Wharton development, Jasmine said. Her mask reflected the shuddering body on the ground, splaying it across her silver features. A man, maybe in his mid-40s, breathing in the spores down here in the damp, something each woman had seen before, cataloged and quantified for those higher up the ladder. Usually the wet went to work on the soft tissues first, working its way through the face, punching through the cheeks and the soft palate. This body was a week or two old. An easy job for two people. They aren't going to be happy. What is this, the third one this year? Fourth, Kathy said, a new alarm pinging inside her mask, then another, each sound stacking itself on the next one before it, echoing the plaintive buzz. Or more. More, Jasmine said. Most cases they tried to catch early, the wet seeping out of an electrical box or appearing in splotches in an elevator lobby, something you could manage, something spraying it down, wiping it away before it could produce spores. This is what Kathy thought the job entailed initially, a glorified cleanup crew. Look closer, Kathy said. The concrete sweat around them. 3 lumps in the corner shuddered together, something like a hand emerging from the black ooze, pulsating with disconnected nerves. The smell of old water flooding Kathy's senses. I never saw one like this, Jasmine said. The body no longer held their interest. The mass in the corner shuddered again, at war with itself, alive under all that rot. They usually don't stay up here this long. They slide back down into the ducts or the sewers. Kathy grunted, turned down the alarms inside her mask until she could hear herself breathe again. The systems were overwhelmed. We're looking at more than one. This is just a mass. A mass of what? Kathy shuffled toward the corner, the one blackened arm now free from the 3 piles, scrounging at the concrete, leaving behind a thick trail of gray pus. You know what? It was at least 3 of them. Kathy circled the undulating mass. She reached into her bag for a fire extinguisher reworked with a powerful corrosive antifungal spray. They were still trying to get the mixture right. No one had officially approved its application. Jas, I need you to get the spray out. She watched Jasmine's hands. They were steady, no trembling or shaking. Jasmine, the spray. When the hand seized Kathy's leg, her mask lit up anew, sensors bleeding in her ears, a voice flickering inside her head, trying to make itself known. The mass of bodies, a family who never returned from their road trip to Muskoka, trapped down here in the dark, all trying to speak as one, alive under the mold, shambling toward her body, under the coursing wet, a fleshy shadow rising up like a sunflower toward the light of her mask, curling toward her warmth. Run. The word was simple, imprinted on her mind, a chorus of voices in her head. It spoke even though there was no mouth. The wet clung to buildings, rotted away the foundations, peeled paint, split wires. Kathy knew the wet could infect a person, find a way into their lungs, weaken their immune system, maybe hospitalize them or leave them slumped in a basement apartment over their cereal, rotting away. It was a toxic mold, unhealthy, but manageable. Don't help. And yet it was here, moving toward her, fighting against itself, begging her to run, a hand wrapping tighter around her leg, searching for purchase. Run. A cloud of white. Jasmine sprayed the air down around her, the powder settling on the mass in the corner, drying it out, the voices in Kathy's head turning to shrieks, to mumbles, to nothing, trailing off into a dial tone she couldn't shake. She staggered away into the fluorescent lights as Jasmine continued to spray, moving in arcs around the heaving, shrieking biomass in the corner until it stopped moving, stopped speaking, until Kathy could hear her mass screeching its warnings again, overwhelmed by the presence of the wet, or whatever it was becoming. You okay? Jasmine stood over her, wreathed in floating white powder, a powerful ghost. Kathy was supposed to be the protector. That was how they knew each other. She couldn't even pull her own trigger, as if the voice holding her back, seizing some nerve inside her, said no. I'm all right, Kathy said, slowly rising to her feet. The voice could have been imagined, was imagined, a new way to process the cluster of bodies slouched together in the corner. It reached for you. Just an impulse. It didn't know what I was, Kathy said, regulating her breathing. The mask hid her fear. She pulled out her sample kit, like a root searching for moisture. It's natural. Did you spray down the first body? We need to make sure we got all of it. First body, yeah, I got him, Jasmine said. As for the coroner was more than just one, that's all. Jasmine tilted her helmet, inscrutable. All right. What? Kathy said. Oh. This is more than we're used to. That's all. Jasmine didn't argue. Thank you.
Dystopia or next week? We'll find out. Thank you so
That's
much.
the
for
scariest
that,
thing
Indra.
of all.
Right?
Thanks, guys.
Alarmingly current. Despite being apocalypse. So there's not bones or anything in the box, are there?
Or fungi. I guess we'll find out. What do our friends in the audience dread, though?
Oh, we have a couple. Taxes.
Yeah.
Always dreadful. Also, the dentist. Grail thinks the dentist or any professional, if they feel will be disappointed if they decide not to do something that will hurt, like flossing, I assume. Yeah, very current dystopian fiction. Don't like that. But I'm thinking another classic means of heightening dread is to reveal more information a drop at a time. A drop at a time, slowly. The Marigold does this in like 20 different PLVs. Just enough to help the reader fill in the gaps, because whatever they can imagine is so much worse than you can.
Like this?
I didn't see anything. Audience, now's your chance. What do you think is in there? Tell us in the
God.
chat. Please tell me, because I really need to know.
And we have one reader left. And it is my very great pleasure to introduce that final reader. Susan Palumbo is a Trinidadian Canadian writer, two-time Nebula finalist, Aurora finalist, and co-founder of the Ignite Awards. Her debut short story collection, Skin Thief, will be published by Neon Hemlock in fall 2023. Her novella Countess will be published by ECW Press in 2024. Her work has appeared in Lightspeed Magazine, The Dark, Pseudopod, Fantasy Magazine, and other venues. She is represented by Michael Curry of the Donald Mass Literary Agency and can be found tweeting as Twitter sinks into oblivion at Silly Syntax or on Instagram at Gothic Syntax. Welcome, Susan.
Hello. Hi. So that was a reading to follow. That was very well read, and I'm a little bit sleep deprived, so I don't have as much energy. So this will just be the dread that is falling asleep as I read it to you. But I'm going to read Laughter Among the Trees, which probably a piece of Laughter Among the Trees, which maybe you have heard of before. It was nominated for the Nebula last year, and I'm reading it from the Hugo Longlist anthology. But you can also find it in Year's Best Dark Fiction, Dark Fantasy, and Horror. I don't even know the names of the books I'm in, but it's also here. And you can find it online too at The Dark. I think they will have a link somewhere. So just before I start reading, I mentioned pee a lot in this. I don't know why. I asked on the internet, why do I keep writing about pee? And people were like, well, people get scared when they have to pee outside. So that's what happens in the story. It's just when one of the characters goes missing, just before and during the missing scene. So I will start. I know we don't have much time. Set in the rectangular clearing across from the flush toilets and hot water showers was a steep metal slide, a seesaw, and a set of swings. Sab and a smaller boy ran towards the swings. I settled on the park bench nearby and ignored their screeching. No one had acknowledged me on the short walk up. I didn't have the allure of a cool older sibling. I wasn't pretty or athletic. Then again, I wasn't interested in playing with these dirty kids either. The Count of Monte Cristo was better company. I sunk into my book, glancing up only after Edmond Dantes had discovered the treasure-filled cave that would finance his revenge. The park was silent, Sab? Her name echoed, mocking me. The playground was empty. I left my book and searched the clearing. She wasn't behind the rusted slide. I circled the washrooms, flinging each door open. Sab! I called, my voice fraying like tattered cloth. Every stall was vacant. The stench of pee made my eyes water. No, that isn't true. I was crying. My throat contracted around a sob. Could she have gone back without me? Did she remember I'd come along? Mom and Dad would kill me for letting their baby out of my sight. I slid my back down the washroom building's wall and pulled up my knees to my chest, taking up as little space as possible. What if I walked into the forest and kept going until there was no light? Until I reached a place where no one could see the disappointment I was. A twig bounced off my head and landed next to my foot. I picked it up between my thumb and index finger and looked up. Sab and her friends were perched in a massive tree. The smaller boy huddled next to her, giggling. Not funny, I yelled. I stood, pitched the twig back at them, and marched to the bench, drenched in the embarrassment that they'd witnessed me crying. Bye, Greg. Bye, Ashley, Chris, Sab called. Seconds later, she was at my heels. It was a joke, she said, panting. It was Greg's idea. She flopped on the bench. I searched either side of her. Move, I said, pushing her aside. Where's my book? What book? She massaged her wrist. Maybe an animal took it. You're the animal, Sab. I started walking back to camp. She was beside me, like a shadow again. You'd better not say anything. I'll tell Mom you were reading your stupid book and never even watched me. I stopped, rage throbbing against the chill inside me, trembling with the effort of holding myself back from grabbing her throat and choking her until she shut up for good. She'd perfected the art of threatening to tell on me over the past year to get what she wanted. Her eyes sparkled, the trace of a smile rippled the surface of her lips. I exhaled and left her standing there. Back at camp, I shut my mouth. Mom would say it served me right for bringing the book, and then be mad that we had to pay a fine. That night, Dad singed chicken dogs on the fire. I crammed them in my mouth, scalding my tongue and ignoring dumb Sab. Smoke ribboned around me, drawing me closer to the crackling heat. Move back, Dad said. I don't want you to catch fire. I wanted the flames to swallow me. I wanted to burn up. Sab nudged me in my sleeping bag that night. I turned my back to her and covered my head. I'll pee my pants and tell Mom you didn't help me. I shimmied out of the bag and unzipped the door. She was right. Mom would be vexed if I didn't help her. She crawled outside and moved to the left a few steps away. Where did I go? Sorry. The night was dark as molasses and awash in a tide of tripping insects. I couldn't make out the station wagon or our parents' tent next to ours. Even the stars were dim. I grabbed the flashlight behind me and flicked it on. Don't shine a light on me, Sab whispered. Who wants to see you pee? Come on, there's mosquitoes. But it wasn't the bugs that made me want to slip back inside. The darkness was heavy, as if the press of an unseen gaze draped my skin. We weren't alone. As I waited for her trickling to stop, footsteps approached. Breathing, steady but shallow, carried on the breeze. It curled around the flare of my left ear and froze my spine. What's that? Sab asked. I peered towards the steps, but it was as if the opaque cloth had been drawn around our tent. Hurry up, I whispered. My heart smashed against my ribs. I bit fresh blood from my lip. I swung the light. Greg? Sab asked. The smaller boy from the park stood there, shielding his eyes from the glare. My stomach dropped. What are you doing here? I hissed. Ashley and Chris saw a moose by the river. Want to come see, Sab? He spoke with a musical lilt similar to my parents, but flatter, like he was mimicking them. None of the kids at the park had been West Indian, had they? In the light, Greg was sallow and thin. He wore a pair of canvas shorts and short-sleeved button-up shirt with a crest on the pocket. It looked like a school uniform. Shadows shrouded his eyes, even with the light pointed at them. When I recall his face now, the image of a yellowed skull atop an emaciated body materializes, and a shudder shakes my core. How'd they find a moose? I puffed myself up, leaning on my age as a mark of authority. Let's go see. Sab was next to him. It's behind the trees on our side. You can come too. He kept his bony head trained on Sab. There couldn't be any moose. Maybe some stranger was using him to lure Sab away. No, I planted my feet. Sab can't go either. We'll be back in 5 minutes. He wasn't asking. This emboldened Sab. Yeah, 5 minutes. Give us the light. She grabbed and yanked at the flashlight with the exact iron strength she had as a baby. I pulled back. Come on, Anna, you're just jealous. He wanted to show me and not you. I let go. Sab stumbled backwards with the flashlight in her hands. She stood up beside Greg and dusted herself off. 5, Greg said. He turned without waiting for an answer. I grabbed Sab's elbow before she could follow him. Don't go. My whisper was hoarse, pleading. She faced me, the light pointed down. Stop it. I'll tell Dad you wrote about wanting to kiss Mia from Jim in your diary. The sick glee in her voice skewered me. My grip went slack. I watched her fade into the darkness with Greg. I should have dragged her back or screamed and woken the entire campground. Instead, I stood outside the tent, shivering, every muscle in my body coiled with rage and shame like a spring. I crawled inside when my legs were numb. Why did you let her go? I imagined Mom yelling. You're supposed to protect her. I slipped back into my sleeping bag and lay awake deep into the night, waiting for Greg's footsteps, listening for Sab's voice, whispering, let me in. I'm going to stop there because time.
Oh, what a chilling end to the event. I love that story. And it's like the best and also worst place to stop.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. And I guess since you're the last reader, it must be time.
Yeah. Are you gonna open it or what?
Well, did the audience have some guesses?
Oh, right. They did have some guesses. A dreadful bow tie, darkness, eternity, Susan. I think Susan might have just been an exclamation of, oh my God, Susan's here. But I think it's a
No, I like doing that. I mean, that's my favorite guess so far.
I'm in here.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting starting to pick apart that nuance between dread and anticipation and desire. I bet if we'd framed this that there was something wonderful in the box.
Just open it. Okay.
But of course, if it was something wonderful, like, yeah.
Everyone, join me.
Okay,
Open it.
Okay.
Everybody's open it.
Oh no, it got away.
What got away?
The truly existential horror that I had in here that was too awful for human speech or comprehension or even perception, really.
Well, I'm sure we've all had existential horror enough in our own lives and just tonight all together. So keep your eyes open and I'm sure you'll find it again.
Ephemera, never a dull moment.
And on that cheerful note, until next time, everyone, please don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Ephemera Series, Twitter for occasional updates, and of course, please subscribe to this YouTube page. If you like to track your adventures via planner or calendar app, feel free to put a standing get together with us. We're always the third Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We would like to thank the Ontario Arts Council for their funding assistance.
And as we close out tonight, we'd also like to thank our fantastic readers, our composer, Alex White, our friends, families, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us, and we will see you next on June 21st